Probably post this video as a response to JonPaulDorn and his response to my video on purposeful lambs. What I was trying to say in that video was that purpose is, well, several things. I was saying that sense of purpose that we get. Firstly, it's very attractive. We feel great. We feel at our best when we're at the service of some higher purpose. Also, purpose, a person who is engaged in purpose, in behaviour, who has adopted, the sense of a larger purpose. These people tend to look and act in a way which, assuming the purpose is one we approve of, we might regard as admirable. They come across as really focused and high-minded or something, you know what I mean? Mature, non-selfish. And the other thing I was saying is that perhaps because of those, also I was saying it's kind of easy. That isn't always the case, but we do seem hardwired to look for purpose sometimes, and resisting purposiveness is sometimes harder than adopting a purpose. But what I was trying to add to that was that purpose is often dangerous and problematic, and allowing oneself to become embroiled in purpose, with all of the great feelings that produces for you as an individual, and all of the kind of credibility it gives you in terms of your presentation, is difficult because of there's nothing more purposive than a suicide bomber. There is nothing more purposive than a cult member. There is nothing more purposive than an ideologue. It does carry with it the possibility of those things, not the inevitability. I certainly wasn't suggesting that all purpose is always inevitably wrong. We should just kind of throw our hands up and say, let's just look after ourselves and ignore any kind of social issues or communal concerns. I wasn't saying that, but I was just indicating that it's a high stakes activity, so it shouldn't be taken lightly. A couple of other things I was saying there as well, just as amplifications or possibly correctives that I might have been misunderstood on. What I certainly wasn't saying is that, well, actually one very minor point which you, JonPaulDorn, if you're watching this video, seem to suggest, is that it sounded like you were thinking that I was condemning teenagers with hoodies who say whatever, and you were agreeing with that condemnation. And I wasn't actually doing that. And if anything, I was saying the reverse. I mean, I was cagey about it, and I wouldn't wholeheartedly support the idea that people who say whatever are wise individuals. But I was saying that there's a certain attitude there to do with, not exactly apatheism, but almost being apathetic, but certainly a refusal to commit to an ideology, which you do find in some teenagers, or at least in the stance that some teenagers affect, if not their actual being, which is, I have no problems with, actually. What else? Groucho Marx. Yeah, I mean, I'm not citing Groucho Marx as a great philosopher, and I'm not citing his aphorism that I wouldn't join any club that would have me as a member as a great, as kind of up there with the quotations from Socrates, not from Socrates, from Plato, or from Nietzsche, or from Kant, or anything like that. But I am thinking there's something quite interesting about that, and something quite modest about it in some ways. What it suggests to me is that that we're all frail human beings, aren't we? With all of our negative not niceties. I got someone a PM this morning which told me that they were unsubscribing from me because I was not a nice person. I don't have a problem with that, and all of us are not nice on some way or other. But one of the concerns that communal activity, collective action sometimes has, particularly this kind of purpose, singular purpose activity, which I think Groucho Marx is in a way critiquing, is that organisations and collective purpose has a habit of amplifying our not niceties. So it's alright being not nice on your own, you're just a pain in the arse. But a whole group of not nice people, those are the kind of not niceties that lead to lynch mobs, and to suicide bombings, and to all that kind of corporate not nicety that's releasing all the oil in the Gulf right now. So so I do have a problem with that, with certain kinds of collective action and purposiveness. I don't have a problem with all collective action and all purposiveness. My major problem actually, I don't think I said this in the video, is to do with how those things are organised. Because there's a world of difference, I think, between the kind of purposiveness which leads to or which mobilises a kind of group mind facility. And I think that's certainly the case with the Taliban example I was talking about, and the training of young suicide bombers. It's about the development of a group mind, with that group mind having a single thought in it, which is about, the logic which leads to suicide bombing. And the Jesus camp thing, I think, is the same thing. It's the formulation of a group mind with one single thought. I have a little bit of a problem with that. But there's a big difference between that kind of collective action and the collective action which maintains individual, maintains the respect for individual thought. You can collectivise thought, you can collectivise action and opinion and ideas without harmonising it, and without editing it, and without dogmatising it, streaming it into a single purpose, I believe. And the best kinds of systems at least try to do that. I mean, parliamentary systems and political systems aren't very good at that, but at least the ambition is not to, or at least with some of them, the Western ones that I know about, the ambition is not to silence opposition, but to find a way of organising society so that opposition can exist, and opposition has a voice, and syntheses can arise out of the various oppositions that inevitably riddle societies. And that's very different from trying to organise group mind and trying to organise a society which thinks one thing, which, some political systems in the past and probably today have indeed tried to do. Silence opposition, get everybody else thinking the same thing. And I suppose the nearest thing I've got to that, I'd like to give a YouTube example, but I haven't really got one. But certainly some of my thinking around YouTube is around the collectivisation of ideas, not the harmonising of ideas around a single thought. But the best example I've got outside of this is something like an economy. I mean, all economies right now are crap and bankrupt, rubbish. But the theory of an economy, I think, is a great one as a metaphor. It's lots and lots of collective actions. You go to the shop, you get your cash out, you buy a t-shirt, you buy a hat, you buy something to eat. And through the workings of an economy, all those little actions that all of us are conducting every single day are somehow collated and are taken into account and filter their way through into supply and demand and all the rest of the workings of an economy. I mean, obviously I'm idealising what an economy is. Economies, as I say, are corrupt in many ways, and many people use them, siphon off all of that goodness for their own personal profit. But in an ideal world, that's the kind of collective action I'm talking about, in which there is no single purpose. No one is collecting all the cash together and asking us all to buy the same product. It's all of our collective actions, all of our little purposes built into a system. So that's what I'm talking about with that. I mean, the last thing there, JonPaulDorn, is education. I am an educator, and I think I have to pick you up on this idea that education is about squashing purpose, or is about not squashing purpose. Again, I think it's either a confusion or a simplification. I would never wish to consciously suppress individual purpose in my students, but I would, however, absolutely desire to be an educator. And education, the word education, I think I'm right in saying, comes from the Latin educe, which means to lead out. It isn't about pouring content and pouring knowledge into a person. It's about leading them out of what they think they know, and leading them out of the kind of prisons of ignorance that they might be in, into places where they can find other things out. And part of that absolutely is about leading people out of purpose, leading people out of thinking that they are that they want to do something, or they want to be a certain kind of person, into the offer of other possibilities, really. Opening the door, just opening the door, that's all it is. So yeah, I think that's it. Just look at this willow, by the way. Look at that, isn't that fantastic? Anyway, thanks for all that. I'm not responding to the Gary thing, so I don't have the context on that one. But thanks for the response.